The hospital was a sterile, clinical environment, cold and uncaring on the surface, yet pulsating with the raw emotions of human vulnerability. The scent of antiseptic clung to everything, seeping into the walls that housed machines that beeped, with mechanical precision, measuring the lives of patients who could only hope for a miracle. In the midst of this, Dr. Ryan stood, his steady hands guiding his work. He had earned his place here, respected for his brilliance and calm demeanor. A man of reason and logic, someone who never let personal feelings cloud his judgment. But beneath that professional exterior, a storm brewed, a storm he had long since ignored. Thinking it would never breach the surface, Sarah had been a patient at the hospital for months. Her chronic illness brought her back for regular checkups, each visit reminding her of the fragility of life. She was no stranger to pain, to the silent battles fought within the body, but it was her spirit that drew people in. She had an aura of quiet strength, an ability to smile through her struggles. Dr. Ryan noticed this from the moment she first entered his care. She wasn't just another patient. There was something in her eyes that unsettled him, a raw vulnerability that he couldn't ignore. She was beautiful in ways that went beyond appearances. There was something in the way she carried herself, an energy that seemed to defy the illness that clung to her. Their interaction started professionally, him, the doctor, doing his job, her, the patient, seeking answers. He checked her medical records with meticulous attention, listened to her concerns with an empathic ear, yet kept a distance, as any doctor should. But somewhere in the routine, a connection formed, subtle, almost imperceptible, but undeniable. Sarah noticed the way his gaze lingered just a little too long when he looked at her, how his smile seemed warmer than necessary. In turn, Dr. Ryan couldn't help but notice how Sarah's eyes followed him as he walked away, how her smile seemed to hold a deeper meaning, as if it were meant just for him. At first it was innocent, a glance here, a brush of the hand there, but soon the tension between them became palpable. Sarah, though battling her own health, began to feel something else. Something stronger, longing for attention, a sense of connection that she hadn't realized she needed. It wasn't just the medical care she was after anymore. It was the way Dr. Ryan made her feel, the way he seemed to look past her illness and see her as a woman. His touch, during routine physical exams, lingered just a moment longer than it should have. His voice, steady and reassuring, sometimes carried an intimacy that made her heart race. And then there were the small things. The way he'd stepped closer when she needed help adjusting in bed, his protective hand on her shoulder. When he reassured her everything would be fine, Sarah's heart fluttered with each passing moment. But she pushed the thoughts aside, reminding herself that he was just being a good doctor, just doing his job. But deep inside, the attraction grew stronger, more undeniable. Dr. Ryan, too, felt the shift. At first, it was subtle, a flutter of excitement when he saw her name on his patient list, a nervous tension in his chest when he stepped into her room. He reassured himself that it was just empathy, that his desire to help her was purely professional. But the truth was, the more he spent time with Sarah, the harder it became to draw a clear line. She wasn't just another patient. She was someone he was starting to care for in ways he shouldn't. And though he tried to distance himself, he found himself drawn to her vulnerability, to the way she trusted him, to the way she needed him. One afternoon, as he adjusted the 4-drip in her arm, their eyes met, and for the first time, there was no professional barrier between them. She smiled softly, her eyes gleaming with something more than gratitude. "Thank you, Dr. Ryan," she said, her voice low and sincere, "for everything." The words were simple, but in that moment they carried the weight of something far deeper. His heart skipped a beat, and for the briefest of moments, he considered crossing the line, doing something he would later regret. Something that would change everything. But he quickly shut the thought down, burying it beneath the professional fade he had so carefully built. He was her doctor. She was his patient. Wasn't supposed to be anything more. But life, as it often does, doesn't follow rules. Sarah's health took a turn for the worse. Her chronic illness, which had been manageable for so long, suddenly flared up, demanding more aggressive treatment. Dr. Ryan found himself spending more time with her, giving her more of his attention, his care. But as his emotional attachment deepened, so did the tension between them. The line between professional and personal began to blur, and with each visit, they both became more tangled in a web of unspoken feelings. One evening, after a particularly long day, Dr. Ryan walked into Sarah's room to find her sitting up in bed, her face pale but determined. She smiled when she saw him, and for a brief moment, everything felt normal. But then she said something that made his heart stop. "I don't know what I'd do without you, Dr. Ryan." Her words hung in the air, a simple statement of gratitude, yet they carried a weight that neither of them could ignore. He felt the urge to reach out, to take her hand, to tell her that everything would be okay, that she wasn't alone. But he didn't. Instead, he looked at her, his gaze steady, eyes, professional demeanor intact, but deep inside, something had shifted. He was no longer just her doctor. She was no longer just his patient. As the days passed, the small moments of closeness grew into something more. Sarah began to confide in him more, sharing her fears and hopes, her frustrations with her illness, her desires for a life she could no longer fully live. Dr. Ryan, in turn, found himself offering her not just medical advice but emotional support. As well, he was there for her, always, in ways that went beyond his professional role. And with every word, every touch, every lingering look, the emotional stakes grew higher. And so, the tension continued to build, slowly, until the moment when everything would finally come to a head. But for now, they lived in a fragile state of denial, each pretending that what was happening between them was nothing more than the ordinary course of care. They couldn't see that their emotions were already leading them toward a tragic end.